I have been patiently waiting here on the homestead to get a stellar elderberry harvest, and this year is the year. Now the berries are finally ready, so let's go pick some elderberry. Hey friends, it's Barbara Sue at Kowalski Mountain, and welcome back to the homestead. I am so excited today because finally we are going to have a stellar harvest of elderberry. Now it's taken me a few years and we've had a few obstacles, but finally I'm going to have a decent harvest. Now last year I did actually harvest some, but I got about a pint and I stuck them in my freezer and I didn't end up doing anything with them. But this year I'm embracing the do it now philosophy. And the do it now philosophy says don't put it in the freezer, do it now. And that's because too many things end up in the freezer that I have to go back to later, and I don't ever have any more time to do it later than I have to do it now. So do it now. It's a life lesson. Take it from me. Now to kind of update you here on my elderberry journey here on the homestead, let's look back a little bit. A few years ago when my daughter Faith was visiting, she looked across the field and she said, "Mom, I think that's elderflower." Now I was super excited because I really wasn't even looking for elderberry here on the property. All of our elderberry grows completely wild. And I was super excited when she found it. Now we confirmed it was definitely elderflower, and I patiently waited for those berries to ripen. Now we did get an elderberry harvest that year, and Faith and I made some elderberry syrup, which you can see that video right up here. And that all happened before we actually moved here to the homestead. Now before we moved here, we purchased our 4 Dexter cattle, and we needed a place to put them, and Philip and I built the paddock that we call the triangle, and it's shaped like a triangle. But it was built to be a secure paddock for the cows, and when we moved here to Kentucky, that was the only pasture we had, was that little tiny triangle. And I did a video about that too, right up here. The bad part about the triangle is that's where my best blackberry patch was. And you notice I said was. And that's also where my elderberries were. And you notice I said were. And that's because despite how we tried to protect it from the cows, they still ate my patch. And we ended up taking the fencing down. We had electric wire around that, and we just let them have it. And they finished it off. Fast forward a little bit further, and I found more elderberry on the farm, and I was super excited, except I had another obstacle, and that's because the person here on the farm who does the mowing kept mowing it over. And I finally said, this is a no-mow zone. Don't mow down the elderberry. And after 2 years, I finally have an elderberry patch that is amazing, and I'm super excited to be harvesting the berries today. Now right behind me, this is the small elderberry patch. This is where the mama guinea was nesting and where the skunk found her. And there's just a small patch here, but we're gonna start our harvest here and see what we can get. Now I've come prepared today. I brought a bucket, because I am expecting an amazing harvest. So let's go get them. Now you can see some of this is not quite ready. We've got green elderberry, and it's not well developed. There is something eating them right here. And even this one I'm going to let ripen a little bit more. But we have got some amazing elderberry. I think this is called ironweed. I need to look it up. It's one of the last flowers for the pollinators. Oops, and we just ran one off. Along with the goldenrod, it's one of the last flowers. I have an enviable thistle collection as well, if you're interested in thistle. Now looking at this small patch, there's a lot of berries that aren't quite ready, but we're going to go ahead and pick what we can, and we're going to move on to some of the other spots. As I'm climbing in here, I think this is goldenrod. As I'm climbing in here, I'm hoping there's not a whole skunk family here. We found one skunk. It was a baby skunk. It no longer lives here, but I hope there's no more. Now this next spot we're going to go to, this isn't even actually what I consider one of my patches. It's just a bonus. And honestly, it's got some really nice berries. Now what I'm looking for is the deep, dark purple berries. I'm trying not to pick the ones that are real red still. It's time to pull the milk. Hopefully I'll remember that later. Let's head over to that big elderberry patch. Now this elderberry patch is my big patch. And now that I walk over here, not as many of these berries are ripe, but we're going to pick as many as we can today. Now you can see that I am chest deep in the weeds here, and Philip was kind enough to mow around this for me, so that's all taken care of, but it's still a lot of brush. Now before I came out here to pick the elderberry, I did go ahead and take some extra measures to protect me from any chiggers or, even worse, turkey mites. Turkey mites are the larval form of the Lone Star tick, and if you get into them, they are miserable. So I have a 3-step approach to dealing with turkey mites, and knock on wood, I have not gotten really bit up since we moved here. So I have my tick repelling soap, which I use that. I also have a pre-treatment where I treat my socks with permethrin, which I do that once a year. You treat them once and they're good for the summer. The final thing that I did today was I use cheap, big box store brand of lice spray. Like you would treat your children with lice if they were to get lice. I take that spray and I rub it on my skin. It's super soft. It's so nice actually. And I use that as a pre-treatment. And anytime I'm going to be in the woods doing something like this, I take the time to do that to any exposed skin. Now, interestingly enough, some of these berries are still completely green. Like this one right behind me, that's completely green. Now I bet when I showed you my 5-gallon bucket that you thought that was overkill, didn't you? And I still have double left to ripen. So this is plenty to get started with. So let's head on up to the house and let's get it started. Now I went on a little side adventure, and I'm sorry I didn't bring you along. I should have. I found a little monarch caterpillar. I'm so excited. I have been looking for a few weeks actually. So my little monarch caterpillar is going to go someplace safe, and I am going to let this little caterpillar eat all he wants and transform into a beautiful butterfly. Now this was totally not going to be part of the video, but we're going to embrace it while we can. This milkweed I found near that other, where I found the caterpillar, but it doesn't have all those little yellow bugs on it. Now I've been wanting to purchase like a butterfly enclosure for just this time, but I never did it. So we're gonna DIY it. I have a glass jar, but I'm not sure that glass is the best thing. But I have this plastic container that we bought pretzels in. And I'm going to modify it. I'm going to see if I can find some screen and stuff. But right now, I just want to secure my adorable little caterpillar. And for now, I'm just going to secure it with this. I'm going to do something better, but this is what I can do real quick. Until I can do something better. That's terrible, but my caterpillar is secure. Now honestly, it's probably a good thing that all those berries weren't ripe, because I would be here for days. Because now we need to remove all these berries from their stems. Now I'm going to pull up a chair and get started. Now because how popular elderberry is, a lot of people don't know that elderberry in its form like that, as a fresh berry, is actually toxic. So you can eat elderberry, but it does have to be cooked. Now I like to refer to this book Everything Elderberry, and it's kind of my guide to make sure that I'm using my elderberry properly. I even get stomach upset when I eat like elderberry chews that you buy in the store. Those bother my stomach, but the fresh elderberry that I make my own elderberry gummies does not upset my stomach. It made a huge difference. But there's lots of different ways to use elderberry if something like the gummies does upset your stomach. Now I have done this lots of different ways. They do actually make a tool to do this, but I do not have one. And I've tried to freeze the berries, and then once you freeze them, you can just shake them off the stems. That works okay, but the stems are also toxic. So while you can have some stem in your berries that won't cause stomach upset, you don't want a lot. And so there's a balance between that. So I found the year that I used the paper bag method, that I froze them in a paper bag and shook them off, that I spent a ton of time picking the stems out. So it balances out. You either pick the berries or you pick the stems. So you pick your poison here. I didn't intend that pun there. Now these just kind of roll right off. And I'm trying to be mindful of the ones that aren't ripe. Like I have some that are a little bit too red. I'm trying just not to even pick those off, leave them right on. I'm trying to refine my technique a little bit here to make this easier because I got a 5-gallon bucket here. And honestly, I could probably not pick the rest this season and be just fine. But I actually have another plan for those. The next batch that I pick, I'm going to dehydrate so that I can save the berries rather than the juice. Just a second. Now I also decided to add gloves just because my fingers were already starting to get purple. And I got a lot of berries, so I want to get ahead of that. This has taken a few hours. Now this is an 8-cup measuring cup, and 8 cups is right here at my thumb. That's 8 cups, so I have quite a bit more than 8 cups. Now I think I'm going to save this for tomorrow to finish. So I'm debating whether I'm going to freeze them overnight because freezing would cause the skins to burst and cause them to juice up a little bit better. So I'm thinking about that. But I'm going to be back tomorrow and we're going to steam these in the steam juicer to make some juice. Good morning, friends. Welcome back. And now today is the next day and we are going to juice the elderberry. Now I'm going to use my steam juicer. Now I love this thing. This was a wonderful investment for me. It's amazing to juice grapes. It's amazing to do elderberry. I didn't like it with apple, and I definitely wouldn't recommend tomatoes. That was disastrous. But for those other fruits, it has been so good. Now just to give you an overview of how this works. This is a 3-pot system. The bottom is where we put water. We fill that with water and it's going to come to a rolling boil, and that's going to create steam. The next section has a hole in the center, so it has a collection area, but it has a cone that comes up and allows the steam from the bottom pot to come up through the middle pot, which is going to collect all the juice. Now the third section is where we put all of the fruit, and it is like a colander, so it allows all of that steam to come up through and it allows all the juice to drip through. Now when you're done, you're going to have the pulp at the top and then the juice in the middle. Now you can do some things with that pulp. I've made fruit leather, applesauce. I've done different things with that pulp. It's not necessarily a waste, but for today's purposes I will probably just throw it in the compost bin. Now I did freeze most of the elderberry last night, not all of it because it would not fit on my tray. Now I mostly did that because I had over 8 cups of elderberry and we live in an RV, so the refrigerator keeps things cold, but you can't overwhelm it. And to put in so much warm fruit, I didn't want the fruit in the center to not cool off. So I split it up, I put some in the freezer, I put the rest in the fridge, and it worked out perfectly. Now as these steam, they're gonna burst and allow all that juice to come through. Now I've already got this started. I already have the water on, so it's coming up to a boil. We're gonna go ahead and add the fruit. Now you can see right here, the challenge of an RV stove is that this barely fits here, and only when I put the lid exactly right. Now, if you'll remember from the part I did earlier, I told you that I picked elderberry last year and I never did anything with it. And this is why. This is not even a full pint. Now we're just going to add this. This has been in the freezer, and so yesterday I took it out to defrost it. Now we're going to put the cover back on. And we're going to let this steam juicer go to work. Now that water needs to come to a full rolling boil. It's going to create steam, and it is going to cause those elderberries to release their wonderful juice. Now the best part is this is also heating it all in the same process. So we're cooking our juice and we are steaming it in one step. Now this is my first peek inside the steamer. All right, now I think my elderberries are finished juicing, so I'm going to go ahead and turn off the heat. It has been a couple of hours since I started doing this, and mostly because it was on and off. I had to do laundry, which if you saw my video about our off-grid laundry room, which you can see right up here, I have to walk up and down the hill to do that. And I never leave my stove running when I'm going to be gone for that length of time. So I would turn it off and I would go do the laundry and I'd come back and I'd turn the stove back on. So that took a little bit longer. Now the berries are pretty well spent, and in a lot of things I would use that pulp, but this I'm just going to discard, and then we're left over with the juice. Alright, so this is cooled down a little bit so I can handle everything. So this has a tube on it, and we can let the juice run out. Now, especially in light of the purple juice, I do want to let this go through the tube. And here we go. So that is a pretty exciting amount of juice. Now I'm going to go ahead and put that on the stove and let it reduce a little bit more. I like it to be a little bit more concentrated. There's a lot of different things I could do with this. Once I make it into a syrup, I can make cough drops and gummies and all kinds of things. For now, I'm just going to reduce it and see where we're going to go next. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it, honestly. The elderberry juice has reduced, and I'd say it's reduced by about 1/3. Now I'm really curious how much is in here. Probably around 1 quart. And with 8 cups of berries to get 4 cups of juice, I think that's a fair amount of juice for such a tiny berry. Now while I was eating lunch, I was thumbing through my Everything Elderberry book looking for some things to do. So I have a few ideas of what I'm going to use this elderberry juice for. But you guessed it, we're going to do that in the next video. Well friends, thank you so much for foraging with me and spending time with me here on the homestead. As always, I really appreciate you watching, especially to the very end. If you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, hit that button. I'd love you to be a part of the Kowalski Mountain family. Thanks so much. I'll see you next time. Now, in case you're wondering, my monarch caterpillar terrarium got an upgrade. Now, the cover's still not as fancy as I'd really like, but it's what I can do. Let me show you the inside. I always check it and make sure there's no caterpillars on this cover when I take it off, because this is certainly not escape proof. Now Philip put some screws in this base so that when they start to turn into chrysalis that I can sit this down and it'll stand up. Now somewhere in here I have 6 caterpillars. And they're definitely eating. Oops, here's one. Now this is a vase of water to try to keep these milkweed fresh because it dries out super fast. And the foil is meant to keep the caterpillars out. Now when I'm out picking leaves for them, I try not to pick any individual leaves to keep as many fresh as possible. But if they break off, I go ahead and bring them in. There it is. And in about 10 days, I should have caterpillars and chrysalis. And then about 3 weeks later, I'll have butterflies.